Hello, everyone. My wife says what I'm doing here is my Veronica Mars impression. So for those of you who enjoy that, I've never seen an episode. But what I'm going to do here, like I said, political suicide of showing why I am so opposed to what you're going to have as a ballot option and possibly the only option with the Hill Pratt um, slate. And so let me preface this with this does not bring me joy. This does not make me comfortable. Um, but it's what we need because this is exactly what we're fighting against. And let me get into that. So Clara Pratt is one of the candidates running for the Arizona Corporation Commission. There. She is also the owner of Navajo Power. Fair. It's a renewable energy solar, all that stuff. And it's only till recently that I realized there's an inherent conflict of interest in that with going on to the ACC, but that's not the main, as you can see by all this, and this isn't even all of it. That isn't the main source of contention. So Navajo Power has essentially a subsidiary called Painted Desert. Now, this is the company, although she says there's nothing wrong with it, this is the company she never brings up. And so was approached uh, by some people that were worried. And honestly, I never knew this until I was approached with this information. And so a lot of what I'm going to present to you, you can look up by going to Navajo-nsn.gov. It's an interesting read. And so what the issue with Painted Desert and the controversy of it is, there is a tax code assessment question. And as a tax accountant, I will in the future look into that. That there's questions on public outreach. Now they say that they reached out to 70. They had 70 public meetings, but as we know, and this will tie in later, when data centers, they do this all the time. We had public meetings and everybody knows and that's not the case. Um, Lack of grazing consent. Uh, and with that, and this is for those of you who are like, no, we must support a Democrat. This is the God, this is disgusting. Using deceased individuals to obtain consent for grazing rights. That's vile. Apparently legal though. But we'll touch into that. That they're essentially were public hearings without the public. And so Pratt keeps pushing back on these are my people, leave them alone. These are her people saying these things and pushing back. That record requests were ignored by the Western Agency Council. And again, with the data center fights we have going on, there are tons of record requests. And this also points to some of the what Pratt and Hill say is, oh, we can stop everything on the ACC by doing record requests and that'll stop things. But they are proof that record requests are ignored and projects pushed through. So there is no power behind these record requests. And we see that at the federal level. We see that at the state level, that the subpoena no longer has any power. So the Minerals Department of Navajo Nation said, quote, proposals do not meet certain criteria. And so there are records that this project is still being pushed through again, just like the data centers always do. They won't fulfill reports, check a box, and move forward with it. Move forward with the project. And there's concern that there's unremediated uranium in that area that these projects will disturb and further complicate the health of the community. And really, there's just public opposition. So, yeah, I agree. My opinion means nothing. What about the community? Well, the community says that the signings were premature. So even before hearings were being held, that documents were being signed and approved. Now, I will point out that all of the everything was approved despite this and many other issues that were going on. But and I this is not my wording. I actually heard it yesterday from someone facing an eviction. Just because you have the legal right does not make it right to do. And this is one of those this is not right situations. I have no problem saying that. Using deceased individuals to gain what you want. Someone in the comments, push back on that. Tell me how that's totally legitimate and great. So, if we move on from Painted Desert, we know that Clara Pratt is trying to get onto ACC. Okay, let's go the other direction because this is, and you can look up on AZ Central. Yes, there is a paywall, unfortunately. I think they give you $1 to start up, pay the dollar. So the other problem with Painted Desert is they're already ready to be sold. And who are they going to be sold to? They're going to be sold to a company called AES, Clean Energy. Highly doubtful that they're great. But who is AES? Now, recently, Pratt and Hill have been calling me a liar, saying that they have always been anti-data center. AES is the company that builds data centers for Meta. Hmm, interesting. And also keep in mind, and even one of Pratt's partners said, yeah, the energy is not going, and then that's why I scratched out because I was trying to qualify it and say, well, unlikely. But they came out and said, no, the energy is not going to stay on the reservation. So just like the data center developers do, they promise all these jobs and all these benefits to the community. But what happens is they extract and violate the land of a community for corporate purposes elsewhere. So, and they, the partner even said that AES was the best value alignment. Now, AES, again, if you want to align values, is aligned with Meta and is aligned with creating data centers. So if that's the best value alignment, that's the value alignment you're getting with the Pratt Hill ticket that swears I'm spreading misinformation on them, and they have always been anti-data center. These are their values. So, chapter initially, because there was, pushing through this process again, like the data center developers do, the chapters have rescinded the resolutions saying, hey, we're cool with this. Community consent has been withdrawn and ignored. The communities have brought up that allegation of forgery. And what is legal is not ethical. And I do not know enough about the consent of deceased people, unless, outside of trusts and wills. But that's not right. Not right. Oh my gosh. Okay, so then they also ignored, like we've talked about, they've also ignored the WAC's um, resolution to pause the projects and investigate. Um, Again, this is a lot of what data center developers do. And according to the Navajo Nation vetting team in Executive Order 02-2023, because, I'm making up lies, I'm not coming up with resolutions that exist. Uh, quote, project or the project, quote, did not meet vetting criteria, end quote. Still moving ahead, just like the data center developers do. And the Navajo Nation sought to legally continue to rescind, but due to the legalities, they were told that they could not. So, and I am aware that there's chapter houses trying to fundraise to do something on this. So again, like many of our communities in these data center incursion areas, and we bring this up at the hearings, Once you say okay, it becomes impossible to undo the okay. And that's always the argument that's used. Oh, we can always undo things. You can't. Once you start it, you can't stop it. Arrgh. This is exhausting. This is a lot, and this isn't in everything. So was told strictly that it would be Navajo owned, but that Painted Desert involves outside investors. So again, this whole I'm a liar, but you are the truth teller when we have documentation of the promises being unfulfilled. And then there's an NDA because there's always an NDA to wherever these data centers show up. That's just part of it, is to keep not only the people in the dark, but those elected here in Pima County. Project Blue was signed by the Board of Supervisors with redacted contracts. So yeah, not at all above water from my point of view. And if you don't agree, that's awesome. And then eventually transmissions lines that'll be laid out, and this is where it gets fun. So to get these transmission lines, and Paige is very concerned because this is likely because the power is not going to stay on the reservation. The power is going to be sent somewhere. And since the power has to go somewhere, the power is now owned or will be owned by AES, the Meta data center builder. The transmission lines are likely to head to Page. And transmission lines are going to be governed by the ACC. So we see that the project going backwards ends up right there. No, no conflict of interest there. But again, this is for you to decide. This is for, and I respect that. Hey, that's democracy. But if you want to help to get another option onto the ballot so that this isn't the continuing story, because this is the continuing story, not only with data centers, but throughout government. And what I learned is I really hate politics because I would rather serve and do good in the community. And so with that said, nothing decided yet, but I might actually drop out of the ACC race so I can focus on stopping not only this particular project, but those just like it that we have up and down the state. Because, quite frankly, a lot of people don't care. A lot of people don't care until it's too late. And it's a very early on fight that we see in this. Like you can have all kinds of resolutions made, and before people even know what's going on, it's too late for them to save their communities. And so, like I said, I'm considering it. I believe the biggest obstacle is a lot of my ego to that. Have to admit it, full transparency. And that's the thing. Every single candidate for the ACC talks about transparency and accountability. This is not transparency. This is not accountability. This is assaulting and insulting every community in Arizona. And so, like I said, I'm in the decision process. I have to overcome my own ego, but ultimately, community is more important than ego. So we will see. This is where we're at. If you want to be angry at me, go right ahead. If you want to hate me, go right ahead. But I think the bar is so low on acceptability here that I really have no problem speaking out. And I will continue to speak out. And I will continue to be a problem. And I will continue to research, and especially like tax code assessments, since it's my profession and expertise. This is where we're at. Not only in the Navajo Nation, Northern Arizona, Southern Arizona, Maricopa, who knows where else these will show up. And so I am absolutely against these data centers for exactly this reason. Not only the environmental damage, the cost passed on to the consumer, but also the social justice issue of communities being taken advantage by bad actors and then having no